in Emor on page 6. Okay, now, okay, we're all here? Okay. So I'm skipping ahead and we're going to go back for a second. I want to show you something. Go to Perek Chaf Aleph Pasuk Yud Zayin, 21:17. We're going to come back to the Kohanim. This is still the Kohanim, 21:17, which is on page 674. So let's talk about the qualifications of the Kohain in the Beis Hamikdash. And on page 674, 7 lines from the bottom. V'daber Hashem al Moshe Lemor, daber al Aaron Lemor, ish mizaracha ledorosam. Any man, asher yebo mum, he has some sort of physical imperfection, lo yikrav lahakriv lechem Elohav. He cannot come to or make offerings in the Beis Hamikdash. A Kohen. And what would happen was, ki kol ish asher mumbo lo yikrov, anybody who has a mum should not come near, ish iver o pisach, if he's blind or he's lame, o chorom o sarua. And the Torah goes through an entire litany over here of possible physical imperfections. Now, the Sanhedrin would actually sit there, and each day the Kohanim would come through that were the Kohanim on duty that day. They had shifts, the Kohanim shift on that day, and they would actually review the Kohanim, and they would disqualify them. According to some, if a Kohen wore glasses, he was disqualified. If a Kohen had, and nowadays there's a question, halachically, if a Kohen wears glasses, he could be disqualified. Something as minute as being left-handed would disqualify a Kohen from serving in the Beis Hamikdash. And are you a Kohen? Are you a lefty? You got no problem anyway. Don't worry, you're not a Kohen. Anyway, lefties have a big advantage in sports. There's a disproportionate amount of tennis champions who have been left-handed, and in ping pong and all these things, because lefties are used to playing righties aren't used to playing lefties. And there's a very disproportionate amount of left-handed pitchers in baseball, because for the same reason, lefties always have an advantage. And my first nephew, my brother's son, we're Kohanim. My brother's also Kohen. And their first son, the first nephew in the family, first grandson. So he was born and was about 2 years old. I started noticing that he's lefty. So I suggested to my sister-in-law that they should tie his arm behind his back to turn him into a righty, so he'll be able to serve in the Beis Hamikdash. So she suggested tying my arm behind my back. So that never took place. And then the biggest joke was my son was born, he's a lefty, my first son. So even now, why? The first question is why? And at a basic level, it's because the Beis Hamikdash is a place, it's like the honor guard in England. They're not real security guards, they're an honor guard, right, by Buckingham Palace. And who do they choose to be honor guards? They always choose very fine physical specimens that people who are watching it are going to be impressed. You walk into the Beis Hamikdash, it's a respectable place. And it's not a place for the people who are either crippled or blind or that. It's not a place for losers, it's a place, now, at a deeper level, the commentaries say that a Kohen comes to the Beis Hamikdash, and maybe his thought process, I don't know about sacrifices. What, we really got to waste all this stuff, and maybe he's not dedicating it to God or not. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu steps in advance and brings about that this person has a physical imperfection, because the physical imperfection will often be a reflection of a spiritual imperfection. And that's the way of, because the Beis Din, they can't look into his soul and know what he's thinking or what averas he's done. So the physical imperfection is a way of indicating that you can't come into the Beis Hamikdash, which HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings it about. Now the commentaries do ask, the Meshech Chochmah asks, well, what about a kid who's born with a physical imperfection? How does that work? So there the Meshech Chochmah says, you're right, but you have, as a precedent, the Gemara says, there's a Gemara that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was once giving a shir. And somebody in the shir had eaten garlic before they came into the shir. They had a big shawarma. They were at Alot Teiman, and they had a big shawarma. They came in, and it was so overpowering that they couldn't go on with the shir. So Rabbi Yehuda and I said, well, the person who ate the shawarma with onions, please leave. So Rabbi Chia, who had not eaten the onions, he got up and he walked out. because he felt that to tell a guy, by the way, you smell bad, could you leave? That would be embarrassing. So Rabbi Chia got up and he walked out. So everybody else realized what Rabbi Chia was doing. They caught his drift. And they realized what Rabbi Chia was doing. So they all got up and they walked out. So the Meshech Chochmah says, we see from that Gemara, not only that, there's another Gemara, in the same Gemara, it says that a woman came to Rabbi Meir's Beis Medrash and she said, one of the Bachrim in your yeshiva did Kedushin with me through cohabitation. He was Mekadesh me through cohabitation. Now that would be embarrassing for one of the Talmidim to get up and say, yeah, it was me. So what did Rabbi Meir do? Rabbi Meir wrote her a get. So all the Talmidim in the Beis Medrash then wrote her a get, which included the guy who had been Mekadesh her. Why did they do? What do you see from the Gemara? To try to save the embarrassment of the person who's got the flaw. So the Meshech Chochmah says that sometimes a person may be born with the mum, even though he doesn't have that spiritual disqualification, only so that those who do will not be embarrassed. We find this also when the Jewish people went out to war. So they would make an announcement, anybody who has planted a vineyard or built a home or has gotten married within the year, you can leave the battlefront. Then they'd say, and anybody who is afraid to go because they have sinned. And if you've sinned and you're going to battle, so that could be some sort of prosecution against you. It's a kitrug. So they would say anybody who sinned could leave the battlefront. Well, what was the point of all the other guys leaving, besides the basic idea, well, you got to spend a year with your wife and battle over there, and you got to build your house and your vineyard. But at the end of the day, it's also a way of helping the sinners to save face. Because when you leave we don't know why you're leaving. Not everybody knows everybody who's there and whether you have a vineyard or you just got married. So the sinners could leave the battlefront without making an announcement, without it being public knowledge that they're sinners, because then everybody leaves. So you see, there is this concept of trying to help people to save people the shame and the embarrassment. That's the underlying idea here. I think Reb Moshe Feinstein, the stories they tell about Reb Moshe Feinstein, you think, oh, come on. So Reb Moshe Feinstein once went to the yeshiva and he got out of the car. They gave him a ride to the yeshiva, and he got out of the car and somebody saw he was holding his fingers. They said, what happened? He says, well, when I got in the car, the guy, I got in and the Talmud outside, he closed the door, and he closed the door on my fingers. So I said, yeah, but you didn't yell. Anybody, it hurts. You didn't yell. He says, yeah, I didn't want to yell because it would make him feel bad. And you're thinking, what? I would have gotten out of the car and sued the guy. I want to make him feel bad. Right? The answer, and Rabbi Gottlieb once explained, it's very interesting. When there's a nerve impulse that rushes to the brain, a person gets his fingers caught in the door, it should happen to our enemies, gets his fingers caught in the door, so then it hurts. And that means there's a nerve impulse rushing to the brain that says pain, pain, pain. But Reb Moshe Feinstein's sensitivity impulse was so well developed that the sensitivity impulse would rush to the brain and got there at the same time. That's how Rabbi Gottlieb put it in Rabbi Gottlieb terms. Wow. Right, in my terms, it's just like, yo, that's how he put it, in more scientific terms. But at the end of the day, I'll tell you another story about Rav Moshe Feinstein, which you're not going to believe. I don't believe it, but I know that the guy told me because he was there in the yeshiva when it happened. There was a bacher in the yeshiva, 16-year-old bacher, who came sliding down a banister. And you know the story? He came sliding down a banister, he came zipping off the banister, and he barreled over Reb Moshe Feinstein. And Reb Moshe got up, and the bacher is frozen, and Reb Moshe got up and he said to the bacher, please forgive me. I know that you bacher like to slide down the banister. I usually stand on the other side of the corridor. I had a mental lapse. I blocked your slide. Please forgive me for blocking your slide. And he walked away. So then the bacher went to the mashgiach, Reb Michal Birnbaum, and Reb Moshe kept apologizing every time he saw the bacher. And eventually the bacher went to Reb Michal Birnbaum, was the mashgiach, the spiritual advisor in yeshiva. He said, I knocked over Reb Moshe, and he keeps apologizing to me. What should I do? So he said, go to Reb Moshe tomorrow and ask him for a bracha. He'll give you a bracha, and feel when he gives you a bracha that he will have atoned for his grievous misdeed of blocking your slide on the banister. So he went and got a bracha from Reb Moshe, and Reb Moshe didn't apologize anymore. Now, when you stop and analyze it, do you think that Reb Moshe thought that he did something wrong? I can't, first of all, Ramesha at his level, you never know, maybe he held himself, I really should anticipate that boys are Vildachayas in the yeshiva, and I shouldn't be standing in front of the banister. Could be. More likely, that Ramesha instantly understood that to let a 16-year-old bacher dwell on the fact that he just knocked over the gadol door could destroy him emotionally. And so before anything, he needs to eradicate, he needs to get that out of the system real quick. So he apologizes. That's the idea of absorbing the idea. So the Torah, the Mefarshim say that's why what about it's not fair to that guy who's okay, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has the whole calculation. But at another level, Rav Hirsch points out, and this is the essential part, the essential point I want to get to. Rav Hirsch points out that what the Torah is emphasizing is people think that religion is the realm and the domain of people who are somehow either socially or mentally unhealthy. Why would anybody in their right mind become a Baal Tshuva? You're off your rocker, right? You're a bunch of what do you call it? You're a bunch of mishuganers. Wait, you think if you wake up in the morning and you touch your eyes without washing your hands, you're going to go blind? Or you got to make a blessing, and you think by saying Tehillim it helps anybody, and they think we're all a bunch of. And you do find a lot of mentally incompetent people who do gravitate toward it, but that's in the regular world also. You have people who have delusions of grandeur. Guys think they're Yashka. There are people. Guys think, I'm a reincarnation of Yashka. That happens. You could easily disprove it. Let's see your hands. Right? You got holes? No? Okay, you're not him. Give him a hockey stick. Yashka was a hockey player, don't you? Yeah, he got nailed into the boards. So it's easily disproved. Let's see you skate. All these things. But there are these delusions of grandeur in that religion. So people do gravitate to religion, and sometimes people are emotionally unstable. But there's this impression that Balei Tshuvas and the frum people, they're just a bunch of losers. They're in yeshiva because they can't get a real job, like Woody Allen said. Remember a famous quote from Woody Allen? Those who can't do, teach. And those who can't teach phys ed. It's a famous line from Woody Allen. By the way, I was a phys ed major in college, so I got all the qualifications. And Woody Allen would be proud. And I didn't even get my degree. How do you like that? There is this perception, and Rav Hirsch says that don't think, in the Beis Hamikdash is not a place for people who are physically or mentally incompetent. The Beis Hamikdash is a place for people who are healthy, physically healthy, mentally healthy. They're Kohanim. They have to go through an inspection process. And we have to know that we're healthy. Religion is healthy. But you should know something. This is extremely important. You do see Balei Tshuvas who seem to be going off the edge. Their fever is a little too high. The temperature is a little too high. My experience in all these years at Ohr Somayach, see, I never made it out. They never made a Baal Tshuva out of me. How do you like that? I'm healthy. My experience has been people who have social problems did not develop social problems when they became Balei Tshuvas. That means they had social problems before they became Balei Tshuvas. People who were off a little bit mentally or socially, it wasn't because they became Balei Tshuvas. It's not because they became frum, so they became a nut. If he was a nut, he was a nut beforehand. And if he wasn't a nut, so he won't be a nut even afterwards. He'll be balanced. And if you have questions when you become a Baal Tshuva, you have to stay balanced. We have to stay balanced. We always talk about don't keep your feet firmly planted on the ground. We're not flower children. Right? Hi, I'm a Baal Tshuva. My name is Rainbow. And no. We're what do you call it? We're very stable and very normal, and we live very, very normal lives. Sometimes people, when making the adjustments, so people are struggling with how to make maybe I should sleep less because I need to learn more Torah. So you need to find the balance. But the people who are balanced, stay balanced. It's not, Torah does not hurt a person. A person hurts a person, not Torah. Torah is healthy. It's not, it's like a guy says, well, I tell you, vitamins aren't good for you. Why? I took a whole jar of vitamins last night, now I have a bad stomach ache. Well, if you don't do it right, the vitamins are good for you. But if you don't do it right, so then it could hurt you. Same thing with Torah. It's not the Torah. Torah is healthy. But what you do with it and how you do it. A guy here in davening this morning, a guy was davening too loud. It's not davening that's the problem. It's the guy doesn't understand that when you daven, you shouldn't be bothering other people when you're davening. That's also part of religion. It's not to just remember that other people live on the planet too. That's the idea. Okay, now go back. I just wanted to get that taken care of because that's an extremely important point. If you take a look let's go back now to Pasuk Aleph, all the way to the beginning, 672. So we were talking about the Tumah of the Kohanim. So the first rule is, why is it that Kohanim are not allowed to come into contact with dead bodies? Why is this rule of Kohanim have this limitation of dead bodies? So idea number one is that in other religions, where does the priest or the pope or whoever it is, where does he come into play? Where does he come into, where usually when somebody's on their deathbed, then they get involved and they read them their last rites and they, do a few Hail Marys or whatever it's called, and they do a Doug Flutie, and then next thing you know, they help you die. What did the person do while they were alive? They could have done every sin under the book, but when a person's ready to die, then the priest gets in, what they call last rites and that sort of thing. The Torah wants to emphasize the Kohen is here to teach us how to live. The Kohen teaches us how to live. That's his job. And when a person's on the Kohen can't help you anywhere on the deathbed. Then you're on your own. But while you're alive, the job of the Kohanim is to teach the people, to be the spiritual guides for the people. So the emphasis is stay away from death. The Kohanim can't come near, except the Torah says, look at Pasuk Beis. Ki im l'she'ero hakorov elav, his nearest relatives. Le'imo, le'aviv, le'vino, le'vito, le'achiv. His mother, his father, his son, his daughter, and his brother. The Kohen has 7 relatives that he is allowed to come into contact with, and not only is allowed to, he has to. That means father, mother, brother, sister, son, daughter, wife. And if any of them die, the Kohen has to come into contact with them. The sister, as long as she hasn't yet gotten married. But the Kohen is obligated to get involved with burying them. Who's the exception to the rule? The exception to the rule, look at Pasuk Yud Aleph for a second. Pasuk Yud 674, 4 lines from the top. V'hakohen hagodol me'echav, the Kohen Gadol, asher yutzak al rosh Hashem ha'mishcha, who's been anointed with the oil as Kohen Gadol, umile yado lubosh as habegadim, and he wears the fancy clothing, es rosho lo yifro v'gadov lo yifrom. He does not allow his hair to grow. He does not rend his garments when he's in mourning. Ve'al kol nafshos meis lo yavo. He's not allowed to come into contact with any dead bodies. Le'aviv u'le'imo lo yitamat, his mother and his father, he is not allowed to come into contact with dead bodies. The Kohen Gadol has all limitations. The only one body he's allowed to come in contact with is who?
His wife?
Nope.
His son?
Nope. Huko. There's only one situation where a Kohen Gadol is allowed and has to get involved with a dead body, which is a mace mitzvah, an unattended body. If the Kohen Gadol is walking in the forest and he sees there's a body lying there, that's called a mace mitzvah. A mace mitzvah means that there is a dead body, where no one is there available to attend to it. Then the Kohen Gadol has an obligation to bury the body or get involved with burying the body. There's actually a Mishnah that asks, what if a Kohen Gadol and a Nazir, who is also not allowed to come into contact with anybody, what if they're walking together and they see a dead body? Which one of them should get involved with the dead body? It's actually a Mishnah. Should it be the Kohen Gadol or the Nazir? Who should get involved? Only one of them will. Now, who should it be? Both of them have that limitation. It's actually a Mishnah and Nazir. Which one of them should, the Kohen Gadol and the Nazir, which one should do it? By the way, which one do you say?
Nazir.
The Nazir, yeah. There are actually 2 opinions in the Gemara, but we paskin the Nazir does, the Kohen Gadol doesn't. The Kohen Gadol doesn't even come into contact with his next of kin. Why not? Not even with next of kin. 2 reasons. Reason number 1 is the basic reason. The basic reason is that the Kohen Gadol has to be so detached. Remember, he is the spiritual leader of the Jewish people. He has to be so detached from anything that's taking place in the physical world that even the death of a relative doesn't have the effect on him of getting involved and preventing him from serving in the Beis Hamikdash. That's how detached he has to be. But there's a second reason, and it goes back to what we said earlier. The family of the Kohen Gadol, they may think that at death they have some protexia, because after all, their father, son, brother is the Kohen Gadol, so they'll be okay. So the family of the Kohen Gadol, whereas a regular Kohen can and should get involved with his family members, the Kohen Gadol's family needs a reminder, your son can't help you. Your son isn't going to be able to help you when you go. Or your brother isn't going to be able to help you. And the emphasis, the way it's emphasized is by the Kohen Gadol not being involved with the family at all. Now, Question, interesting halachic question. You know, we say on Yom Kippur and on Tisha B'Av, we read about the 10 martyrs. And the first two are taken out is Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel and Rabbi Yishmael Kohen Gadol. And they start arguing with the Roman emperor, you kill me first so I don't see his death. No, kill me first so I don't see his death. And then what happens? They take out Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel and they chop off his head. And what does Rabbi Yishmael Kohen Gadol do? He actually picks up the head and he said, this mouth, the tongue that spoke Torah and taught Torah, this is the fate that such a thing. What's the obvious question? He was Yishmael Kohen Gadol. Very good, Jeremy. How can he pick up the head? How can Rabbi Yishmael Kohen Gadol? He's a Kohen Gadol. How can he pick up the head of Shimon ben Gamliel? Good question, isn't it? What's the answer? Oh, so one answer is it's an unintended body. First thing is get involved. What will the Romans let me bury him or not? I don't know, but first thing I got to get involved. I'll worry about that in a little while. Then I'll ask him, hey, do you mind if I bury this head? But I can't leave the head lying around on the ground. So the first answer is it's a meis mitzvah. A friend of mine, Rabbi Dr. Joel Leibovitz, he said another answer. He said, when there's an idea, you have to try to promote your own life extend your own life as long as possible. Unless it's idol worship, immorality, or murder, you have to try to keep yourself alive. And all the Torah is set aside to keep yourself alive. Even Shabbos desecration and so on and so forth. Rabbi Yishmael Kohen Gadol knew that as soon as he picks up this head and he puts on a performance by talking, the Romans aren't going to kill him. They're going to wait to see the performance. So he manages to extend his life, even if it's only a minute, he manages to extend his life. So he's allowed to pick up the head. Brilliant answer. He's allowed to pick up the head because now they're going, hey, look at the Jews, he's upset. This is entertaining. Yeah, in the meantime, he keeps himself alive. So he's allowed to pick up the head, okay? That's second limitation. Why don't women have this limitation? In other words, a woman who is married to a Kohain, or she's a Bas Kohain, and my wife is both. My wife's husband is a Kohain. That's me. And she's also a daughter of a Kohain. So, but she could be on the Chevra Kadisha. A woman could be on the Chevra. My mother was on the Chevra Kadisha, the women's Chevra, when they do a Tahara on the way, so the women do the Tahara. My mother was married to a Kohain, and she's a Bas Kohain. And my father is a Kohain. And she was on the, why is there no limitation on women? Only a male Kohain has these limitations, but not women. Why?
It passes through the father, maybe?
But she's a Kohain. No, she's got Kohain because she could eat truma if she's in her father's house. What? They don't serve in the Beis Hamikdash. They serve their husbands. They're supposed to serve their husbands, make sacrifices for their husbands, or making the sacrifice, as the case may be. Right? They serve dinner to their husband. Sometimes. Right? No. The answer is because the women brought death to the world. Chava brought death to the world. The women brought death to the world. Since they brought death to, did I make that clear? Since they brought death to the world, so that's why she lights Shabbos candles also. Because the pasuk says, Ner Hashem nishmas adam. God's flame is man's soul. Who extinguished that soul originally? It was her. She was the catalyst of the sin. It was actually the snake. But the snake is out of the running over here. She prompted her husband to eat the fruit, to eat the forbidden fruit. Therefore, since she extinguished the flame, she's the one who relights the flame every Erev Shabbos. Since she brought death to the world, she rectifies that by being involved with the mitzvah of burying the dead. Therefore, there's no limitation on women. That's the what do you call it? When you're on a shidduch, you can bring that up as a dvar Torah. Hi, what's your name? Lisa. By the way, you're responsible for death in the world. Want to get some pizza? It's only a suggestion. You don't have to do it. What's that? It works every time. The girls love it. Yeah. The guy said after his 17th shidduch. Okay. What else have we got here? Okay, now I'll show you something very subtle. I'll show you the brilliance of the Meshech Chochmah. Watch this. If you look at Pasuk Beis, now watch this. It's very subtle, but it just shows you just the brilliance and the subtlety. In Pasuk Beis it says, when it talks about the limitation on a regular Kohen. Anybody know what a regular Kohen is called? A Kohen Hedyot. Hedyot, not idiot. Idiot is an idiot. Now people mix this up. Hedyot means ordinary, as opposed to the Kohen Gadol. Every other Kohen is called a Kohen Hedyot. Hey Daled Yud Vav Tes. Hedyot. Okay. So look in Pasuk Beis. It says in the limitations, Ki im l'she'ero ha'korov elav. The regular Kohen has an obligation to come into contact with le'imo, his mother, ule'aviv, his father, v'livno avito ulachiv. Notice the order. Puts the mother before the father. Turn to Pasuk Yud Aleph, next page. When it puts the limitations on the Kohen Gadol, so it says in Pasuk Yud Aleph, ve'al 7 lines from the top. Ve'al kol nafshos meis lo yavo, le'aviv u'le'imo lo yitama. It reverses the order, father and mother. Why? And there are no typos in Torah. If the Torah said it that way, says the Meshech Chochmah. Good question, right? I mean, it's a great question. It's just interesting, something you should notice. What's the answer? What's the answer? Says the Meshech Chochmah, by a regular Kohen, if the mother predeceases the father, the mother died first. So you might have thought, since the father is around to deal with it, you might have thought that he shouldn't get involved with his mother. Therefore, it puts the mother first to tell you that even if she dies first, the son, who's a Kohen, and even though the father's still alive, the son does get involved with the mother. By a Kohen Gadol, it's the opposite. If the father predeceases the mother, so now there's no one around to take care of her. Even in that situation, a Kohen Gadol does not get involved. That's what the Meshech Chochmah says. That's what the Torah is emphasizing by reversing the words. That the order also is an indication of what's going on. By the way, a woman who dies first, the Svarim say that is an honor for the woman to predecease her husband. Why? Strange concept, but if you'll understand in a second. You know, there's a concept of a woman who's called a katlanis. What's a katlanis? Katlanis is a woman who's had 3 husbands who have died. Some say 2 husbands who have died. That she's not allowed to get married, she's a killer. That's what katlanis means. She's a killer. And if you marry her, you're risking your life. It doesn't matter how, and it depends how they died. If they died of natural causes, was natural poisoning, or was it, was it, so it's not a what do you call it? It's not a, she's called a katlanis. For a woman to die before her husband is an honor for the woman because that shows that there's no doubt at all she's not a katlanis. If a woman predeceases her husband, she's not a katlanis. That's what the Svarim say. So that sometimes, obviously, statistically, by the way, women live longer. That is a statistic. Women live to about, now the expected life say for women is about 80, for men is about 76, something like that, 74, 76. So women do live longer than men. But if she does predecease them, many Gedolim, you see that their wives predecease them. Many of the Gedolim of their wives were nifter first. Rav Elyashiv, Rav Chaim Kanievsky, others. It's an honor for the woman, that's what the Svarim say. That shows that she's not a katlanis. Okay? Here these 2 guys are talking in a bar. Guy says to the other, I married 3 times and all of them died. This is what happened. He says, well, the first one died of poison mushrooms. Yeah, second one, poison mushrooms. Third one, fractured skull. Oh, what happened? He says, she wouldn't eat the mushrooms. so okay. You guys are terrible. You guys are terrible. You're just okay. Take a look. Take a look at back now. One more limitation, then we're going to tie it all together. 2 lines from the bottom on 672. Isha zona v'chalola lo yikachu. A woman who is a zona. Now, zona in modern Hebrew generally refers to a harlot. A zona in halacha means a woman who has had an illicit relationship. For example, a girl who has lived with a non-Jew. She has the halachic status of a zona. She has also the halachic status of a chalola. She can't marry a Kohain. But she's also called a zona, a woman who, let's say, has cohabited with her brother. That makes her, besides being a chalola, she's a zona. Then you have a chalola, which is a girl who didn't do anything wrong. She was just born to a father who is a cholol. All right, there we go. We're back to the Makos. You know, it's all one Torah. It all ties together, gentlemen. So the Kohain, now we're talking about a regular Kohain. Isha zona lo yikachu. They're not allowed to marry a zona or a chalola. Isha grusha me isha leikov. They're not allowed to marry a divorcee. Ki kadoshu leilokov, because he is holy to his God. He's not allowed to marry any tainted woman. Now, because of the holiness of the Kohain. So the question becomes, well, what about a divorcee? Why is a divorcee considered a tainted woman? It's not her fault. Most of the time, it's the husband's fault anyway. So why is that considered a flaw? So one answer is a widow. When you think socially, widow versus divorcee, which one carries more of a stigma? A divorcee. There is still a stigma to it. Number one, widow. It's not her fault. The guy had a heart attack. Maybe it is, but but assuming it's not her fault. Number one. Number two, the job of the Kohanim was to unite people. A divorce means that there was a separation. A death, there was also a separation, but it's not what we call a separation. We call it a loss. A divorce means that there was a connection that was severed. Do you know that the word get, which is the divorce document, it's the only time in the Hebrew language anywhere where the letters gimel and tes appear next to each other. The get, which separates the gimel, the couple, the gimel and the tes, that's the last time this couple is together. And you never find the gimel and a tes together anywhere else in any combination in the Hebrew language. So because they are separated as a result of, they're separated, therefore the Kohanim, whose job is to unite people, to make shalom, like Aaron HaKohen, who was the paradigm of shalom, who went around making people, creating peace, therefore he can't marry a tainted woman or a woman who's been divorced. A widow he's allowed to marry. A Kohen Gadol cannot marry a widow. Kohen Gadol is not allowed to even marry a widow. He has to marry a girl, he has to marry a virgin. He's not allowed to marry a widow. I'll get you 1 second, Josh. Now, look at the next pasuk. V'kidashto. You have to sanctify him. You have to make him holy. And we learned two halachas over here. Number one, if a Kohen is married to a woman that he shouldn't be married to, Beis Din has to get involved and make him get divorced. How do they do it? First, they ask him nicely. If that doesn't work, then they make him an offer he can't refuse. Right? You will use corporal punishment if necessary until he divorces her. That's what happened nowadays we don't have a Beis Din. But there have been cases through Jewish. The Rambam writes that if a Kohen is married, the Rambam was asked a question about a Kohen married to a divorcee, and the Rambam says they have to be flogged, and there's the time of the Rambam, there's already Rishonim. They have to be flogged, and they have to be put into excommunication, and they have to come back to get divorced, then he comes back to it. And then the Rambam writes, even when they come back to Beis Din and they've done tshuva, and you're convinced they've done tshuva, then you whip them again, just for good measure. I never saw that before. You give them a couple more just to make sure. A couple for the road. That's what the Rambam writes. So that's number one of the Kiddush. Number two is that you must respect the Kohen. That means the Kohen gets the first aliyah, and the Kohen leads the benching, and when you're sitting at a meal and they're passing around a platter of food, Jack, then you have to offer the Kohen to take first, Mike. Yeah, well, that one everybody forgets about. Like, the aliyah will give you. You want to lead the benching? Go ahead. Well, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Somehow the platter never gets to me first. Yeah, that everybody forgets about. That's a halacha. That's a halacha, gentlemen. Read him and weep, right? And try to memorize it. It's important to remember Torah. Yeah, you have to, the kiddashto, you have to honor the Kohain, number one. Number two, there's a halacha in Shulchan Aruch. In Siman Kuf Chaf Ches. Sif Katan is Mem Hey. Aser liishtamesh bekohen bezman hazeh. You are not allowed to make use of a kohen. You can't ask a kohen for favors. You cannot ask a kohen for favors. There is even an opinion among the commentaries that you can't ask him to pass the ketchup. How do you like that? How do you like that? You can't ask a kohen to do things for you. A kohen could do it for you if he feels he wants to. If he feels you're an Adam Chashuv, he could do it. He can do things for pay. But he cannot do things that are degrading. I have a neighbor who unfortunately was a widow. Now, I was walking out of the house. She had her garbage bag in front of her door. So I wanted to take the garbage for her. So I did. Then I asked the posek, who lives in the same building. And he said, it's problematic for a kohen to do that, to take garbage is problematic for a kohen. Now, she was out of luck because there are 4 people living in the entrance. One is the Rav of the community. He's not allowed to do it. There's me and the other guy who's a kohen, so we can't do it. So there's a halacha of the kiddush. You can't ask a kohen to do something. Now, when I was married, my second year marriage, I don't know why it took me so long, but my wife asked me to take the garbage one morning. Now, I remember this conversation is carved into my memory, etched into my memory. I remember exactly how it went because I said to my wife, how does it look for me, a Kohen, to take the garbage? And my wife said, how does it look for you, a Kohen, to be single? So I took the garbage. Then I asked the posek why I'm allowed to. Now, I knew I'm allowed to, ishto kagufa, your wife and you're one. Yeah, I know all about it. But I was more curious to hear the halachic answer. The halach, I know I could do it. I said, why am I allowed to do it? So the posek said to me, listen, not all of the eggshells and orange peels in the garbage belong to her. It's not like you're doing it for her. Some of the garbage is yours also, and it's got to get out of the house. So there is a question about the poskim talk about a father asking his son to do something. That you're allowed to do for the sake of chinuch. But even a minor, a kohen who's a minor, to ask him to do something for you, there are poskim that say it's not clear if you're allowed to or not, even if he's a minor under bar mitzvah. But since it's a Torah law that you're not allowed to make use of him, it's a suffek deoraisa and you shouldn't do it. How do you like that, Mike? How do you like that? Huh? Everybody like this halacha? So maybe let's review this halacha, gentlemen. It's lonely at the top. See, so the what do you call that? That's, I didn't make it up. I'm only teaching you Torah. So there are some parts of Torah that we gotta remember. So that's the halacha. Okay, let's tie this all together. Watch this. The Kohen Gadol, who represents the ultimate in kahuna, he has 3 limitations. He's not allowed to come into a dead body. He's not allowed to marry a woman, any sort of imperfect woman, because he has to marry a basula. And he's not allowed to have any sort of physical blemish. What's the idea? The answer is, the ultimate perfection in life was Adam Harishon Kodem Hachet, Adam before the original sin. Before the original sin, everything was perfect. That means there would have been no death in the world. There would have been no illness in the world, symbolized by physical imperfections. And there would have been no flawed marriages in the world. There would have been no divorce. There would have been no death, no widows. The Kohen Gadol, who is the spiritual leader of the Jewish people, he's a reminder of Adam Harishon Kodem Hachet. That means that the level that we're striving for ultimately is to get back to that state, the state the world was in before the original sin, which is Adam Harishon Kodem Hachet, and that's the world that the Kohen Gadol represents. He can't come into contact with dead bodies. He has no allowed physical imperfection, and he is only allowed to marry a Besula, the perfect world, which is a reflection of Adam Rishon Korah B'Chet. So all of these limitations on the Kohanim, these are all limitations. Tomorrow, I'll talk about some of the technical problems that Kohanim run into, which we're going to speak about it today. I've talked about some of the technical problems, and then we may want to speak a little bit about Lag BaOmer, about Rav Shimon Bar Yochai. We'll see. Okay.